How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Average Joe, the series where I'll be taking a look at a vehicle and telling you whether or not I believe it's worth the average player's time or money. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at the AMX, a Rank 7 10.3 Italian strike aircraft. With all that out of the way, let's jump right into what this vehicle is capable of, starting with the weaponry. Starting off with your primary weapon, you're going to be armed with the Vulcan. Now, the Vulcan has a very good fire rate and a pretty good velocity, however, it is plagued by the fact that it has a spin-up, low ammo on this plane with only 400 rounds, which compared to other planes with Vulcans is just not gonna cut it, and the fact that its damage has been very inconsistent recently. Overall, it's still pretty good, but I wouldn't rely on it. Next up, let's talk about your air-to-air secondary weapons, because you can be armed with two AIM-9Ls, which are just kind of absurd at this battle rating. They're partially flare-resistant, all-aspect 30G pulling missiles. These things will also catch people out at far ranges when compared to other missiles at the same battle rating. You can rely on these to kill basically anyone without flares, or anyone that you get into rear aspect with, because since they have minor flare resistance, if the person doesn't know how to flare an AIM-9L, they aren't gonna flare the AIM-9L. Now, I'm not gonna be talking about its air-to-ground capabilities in this video, however I will show all of the secondary weapons that it can bring. If you'd like to see a video talking about its abilities to be used as a CAS airframe, I can do that, but I won't be doing it in this video. Lastly, when it comes to your equipment, you are armed with 120 countermeasures, which is very, very good for the battle rating. Most aircraft around this point are going to be armed with about 60, so having double that is very, very nice. Moving on to the airframe itself, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here because I think it's amazing. It really only has two downsides, and that's its top speed and its low speed performance, but we'll get to those when we get to those. Starting off with your top speed is really the biggest limitation on this plane, being about 1130 kilometers an hour on the deck. Now, you do redline at this speed, so it's not like putting a better engine would make it any faster. It would just, make you brake. However, it is still worth noting that this is your biggest limitation. However, it's also like that because you don't have an afterburner, meaning flaring missiles, even AIM-9Ls, is going to be insanely easy. Next up is your acceleration, which in my opinion is very good. It's not going to be enough to get off the runway before a Harrier, but it is still going to get you up in the air before most of your teammates, and you'll hit your top speed typically before they do. So though you won't be the first one to bases if you wanted to bomb with this thing, it's still enough to where you're not going to be lagging behind your team by much. Next up is energy retention, which I will say you will dump a lot of speed in your first turn. However, once you're down to about 600-500 kilometers an hour, you really struggle to lose speed unless you are holding a turn with flaps down basically. Now, once you get below 500 kilometers an hour, yet again, this is where the low speed performance starts to kick in. You basically instantly lose all of that speed and start to stall out. So if you can stay between 400 and 700, you're going to be real peachy. Up next is maneuverability, which you wouldn't expect a strike aircraft to be very good at, but you're basically on par with some of the worst fighters when it comes to maneuverability. And because you lose a lot of speed in that first turn, if you want to one-turn with somebody, it actually works out pretty well. You will be about as maneuverable as most of them, and you're slower, so they're going to pull right in front of you typically. Now, if they go vertical, it's a different story. If you ever get pulled into a vertical where they're just going straight up trying to drain you of energy, typically they're going to struggle with it for one reason, or you're going to struggle for a different reason. They might struggle because since you're slower, you're going to be behind them no matter what basically, and you have a Vulcan. A very good gun when it comes to dealing with people that are trying to go vertical. So long as you can hit them before you run out of energy, you've won. And it's typically not that hard to hit that shot unless they get beyond a kilometer. However, if they do successfully stall you out, it's over for you. Now, in a lot of planes, you might be able to get away from them, especially considering you do have good acceleration, so you'd think you might have a chance. The problem is, your low speed performance is really bad. Just really, really, really bad. If you get into low speed performance territory, you may as well consider yourself dead already. It's very easy for this plane at low speed to just kind of get stuck in the air, unable to even put its nose down. It's really bad. If you can stay away from that speed and pull away when you realize you're getting into that territory, you should be able to get away from a vertical. Otherwise, you're already dead. Now then, do I think it's worth the amount of time and effort that it takes to get this vehicle? Honestly, I'm gonna say yes, and I'm gonna say yes for two reasons. One, because it's a fantastic plane, and the other reason is because I talisman this thing, and I would highly recommend everyone else that gets it does the same, because if you want to grind top tier Italy, your only option is to either play a rank 7, or it is to play the F104S TAF, which I did a video on that thing. It isn't good. Don't play that. If you have to, play that thing till you get this, put a talisman on this. It's way more enjoyable. With all that out of the way, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please let me know in the comments if there's any other vehicles you'd like for me to cover in the future. Have a good one.